Welcome back to Alien Dream Chronicles. Tonight's episode will take you on a journey into the unknown as we unveil the secrets of the Andromeda Galaxy. With the calming sound of distant stars and the soft hum of the cosmos, let these mysterious tales of alien encounters and cosmic discoveries guide you into a peaceful slumber. So relax, close your eyes, and let the mysteries of the universe unfold as you drift off into the world of dreams. Chapter 1. The Andromeda Enigma, universe vast and unyielding, hums with a quiet energy that stretches far beyond our imagination. Deep in the cosmos, hidden within the cold abyss of space, lies a mystery that has confounded scientists, astronomers, and dreamers alike for centuries. It is a mystery so compelling, so alluring, that it calls to us in the dead of night, whispering across the void. This is the story of the Andromeda Galaxy, the closest spiral galaxy to our own, the Milky Way, and a place where the impossible seems not only plausible but inevitable. Andromeda is vast, with an estimated diameter of 220,000 light-years, and containing over 1 trillion stars. It is a universe unto itself. Just over 2 million light-years away, it's visible to the naked eye from Earth, a faint, ethereal smudge in the night sky. To most people, it's nothing more than a distant, blurry patch in the sky, a small speck of light hidden among the countless other stars. But for those who dare to look closer, who seek to understand what lies beyond the veil of our own galaxy, Andromeda is an enigma that defies all logic and reason. The ancient Greeks called it the Andromeda Nebula, after the mythological princes. But it wasn't until the 20th century that humanity began to fully appreciate its true scale and significance. Edwin Hubble, the legendary astronomer, confirmed that Andromeda was not just another star in the Milky Way, but a separate galaxy altogether, an entirely different world. One with its own mysteries, its own history, and perhaps its own inhabitants. Yet, even today, despite all our scientific advancements, we know little about Andromeda. Its secrets are locked away, buried beneath billions of years of cosmic dust and dark matter. Scientists have sent out probes, telescopes have peered into its depths, and radio signals have been transmitted across the expanse, all in the hopes of uncovering its true nature. And yet, we've barely scratched the surface. The first clue that something was amiss, that Andromeda held more than just stars and nebulae, came in the early 1980s. A series of strange, unexplainable signals began, emanating from deep within the galaxy, signals that didn't match anything known to mankind. These weren't the usual cosmic noises, no bursts of radiation, no supernova echoes, no gravitational waves. These signals were different. They were structured. They followed a pattern, like an intelligent being was trying to reach out from the farthest corners of the universe. It started as a whisper, a faint, high-frequency pulse detected by an old experimental radio telescope. At first, scientists thought it was an anomaly, a fluke of cosmic background radiation or a malfunctioning piece of equipment. But then the signals kept coming. They were too consistent to ignore. They repeated with a precision that suggested intelligence, a message from somewhere or from someone out there in the black void. For years, the signals puzzled astronomers. Was it the remnants of a dying star sending out erratic bursts of energy? A distant pulsar flickering with its final breaths? Or was it something else entirely? A signal from another civilization, a race of beings far older and more advanced than us, broadcasting their existence across the vast chasm of space? The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. A handful of theories were put forth, some more outlandish than others. A team of researchers from the SETI Institute searched for extraterrestrial intelligence, analyzed the data, convinced that this wasn't some random cosmic phenomenon. There was intent behind the signals, a deliberate effort to communicate, to reach out, to make contact. But who or what was sending these signals? The mystery deepened when the signals began to change. At first, they were simple pulses, structured in a repetitive manner, but as the years went by, the messages evolved. New patterns emerged, ones that seemed to imply a deeper understanding of mathematics, physics, and even human language. The signals grew more complex, as if the sender was trying to communicate something beyond the scope of our comprehension. One evening in 1989, a new unexpected signal arrived. This one was different. It was more than just a series of pulses. It was a message, a clear, unmistakable attempt to engage. The message contained mathematical equations, geometric shapes, and sequences that seemed far too advanced for us to fully understand. But amidst the confusion, there was one constant. The coordinates pointed directly to a specific location within the Andromeda Galaxy. The source of the signals was closer than anyone had imagined. Scientists scrambled to analyze the data, to decipher the meaning behind the message. Was this proof of intelligent extraterrestrial life? A signal from a civilization far more advanced than our own, just waiting to be discovered? Or was it a more natural, but still highly unusual, phenomenon that we simply didn't understand? Yet, the implications were enormous. If the message was real, it would mean that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. But if it was a hoax, a fabrication, the world would be left to grapple with a profound sense of disappointment and confusion. The debate raged on for years, with scientists and skeptics alike arguing over the validity of the message. As the years passed, the signals became harder to detect, fading into the background noise of the cosmos. But they were never truly forgotten. And as the scientific community turned its attention elsewhere, to new galaxies, new phenomena, the enigma of Andromeda continued to linger at the edge of human knowledge. The possibility of intelligent life beyond our world, waiting to make contact, remained tantalizingly close, just beyond reach. In recent years, there have been new reports of strange phenomena in the Andromeda Galaxy, unexplained energy bursts, mysterious light patterns, and the occasional unaccounted-for object drifting through space. Some believe these events are the result of natural cosmic forces at work. Others argue that they're signs, indicators that the Andromeda Galaxy may not be as empty as we once thought. And so, the mystery remains unsolved, floating in the dark expanse of space, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets. But the question still echoes in the minds of those who dare to wonder. What if the Andromeda Galaxy holds more than just stars and planets? What if it holds the key to understanding the true nature of the universe and our place within it? As we continue to explore the vastness of the cosmos, one thing becomes clear. The Andromeda Galaxy is a riddle, an enigma wrapped in a mystery, just waiting to be unveiled. And in the quiet silence of space, under the gleaming stars, its secrets wait patiently, calling out to those who are willing to listen. Chapter 2: The Hidden Signals. For years, the signals from the Andromeda Galaxy were dismissed as nothing more than cosmic noise, faint, almost imperceptible echoes that slipped through the vast expanse of space. But in the quiet hum of those seemingly random signals, something shifted. There was a pattern, a method to the madness that no one had expected. It started in the late 1980s, when a group of scientists, far from the public eye, began to notice something strange. A deep space radio telescope, nestled in the isolated hills of Nevada, picked up a series of transmissions unlike anything the team had encountered before. The signals came intermittently, spread across a span of weeks, each one seeming to carry a slightly different message. But the pattern was undeniable. The signals were not static. They were too organized, too deliberate to be random noise from dying stars or drifting cosmic debris. This was something else, something that felt like it was speaking directly to them. But what was it saying? And who or what was behind it? Dr. Evelyn Hayes, the lead astrophysicist on the project, was the first to recognize the significance. Sitting in the dimly lit observation room, surrounded by humming computers and flickering screens, she stared at the waveform on her monitor. She had been studying radio signals from distant stars for over a decade, but nothing had ever felt like this. These aren't ordinary signals, she muttered to herself, running the data through a series of complex algorithms. As she deciphered the message, her eyes widened. It was as if the signals were trying to communicate something in a language of numbers and symbols. But they weren't just random sequences. No, these numbers followed a set of geometric patterns, precise mathematical equations that didn't seem possible. Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone. "I need to speak to Dr. Kowalski," she said to her assistant. Now, Dr. Victor Kowalski, a colleague from the SETI Institute, was the foremost expert in extraterrestrial communication. His team had been working for years on analyzing deep space signals, hoping for the breakthrough they had all dreamed of. When Dr. Hayes shared her findings with him, he was skeptical at first. But as he saw the data unfold on the screen, his skepticism evaporated. What they were seeing was not only intelligent, it was sophisticated, far more advanced than anything humans had ever produced. "It's not just a signal," Kowalski said, leaning closer to the monitor. "It's a message." The data was indeed staggering. The pulses, which had been faint at first, were now increasing in frequency. But it wasn't just the quantity of the signals that caught their attention. It was the structure. Dr. Hayes and her team noticed something that felt almost like an invitation. The signals came in bursts, spaced at regular intervals, forming perfect mathematical rhythms. There were prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and even complex fractal patterns, all elements that any advanced intelligence would recognize. The scientists quickly realized they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. But there was one key piece of the puzzle that stood out. The signals, though precise, seemed to be coming from a specific location within the Andromeda Galaxy, a part of the galaxy that had never been closely studied before. It was as if someone, or something, was trying to guide them toward a specific point in the vast expanse of space. And this was no coincidence. The implications were mind-boggling. If these signals were indeed the product of an intelligent civilization, it would change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. It would mean that extraterrestrial life was not only real, but actively attempting to communicate with us. As weeks passed, the signals grew stronger. But they didn't just come in regular intervals, they seemed to be evolving. At first, the team had been able to decipher simple numerical sequences, patterns that repeated themselves in predictable ways. But now, the signals contained something new, a complex set of symbols, unlike any language they had ever encountered. These symbols, though still mathematical in nature, had a distinct visual quality to them, shapes that seemed to represent something more than just numbers. They were geometric, crystalline even, as if they were trying to convey more than just raw data. They were art. Dr. Hayes spent countless sleepless nights trying to decode the symbols, but the closer she got, the more questions arose. The symbols didn't just form equations or formulas. They seemed to shift and change depending on how she looked at them. They were alive, mutable. They defied the rigid structure of human mathematics, and yet they felt familiar. Like ancient knowledge, forgotten but not lost. "There's something else here," Dr. Hayes whispered one evening, staring at the screen. "This isn't just a message, it's a map. A map of what?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The signals continued to evolve over the next few months, gradually becoming more complex. The first bursts had been simple numerical sequences, but as they decoded more and more of the transmissions, the team began to notice something extraordinary. The signals contained a series of coordinates, an astronomical map that led directly to a specific part of the Andromeda Galaxy. It wasn't just a vague location. The coordinates pinpointed a specific cluster of stars within the galaxy, an area that had previously been dismissed by astronomers as unremarkable. But now, with the data in front of them, Dr. Hayes and her team realized that this cluster was anything but ordinary. "What are we looking at here?" Dr. Kowalski asked, his voice filled with awe. "This is no accident. This is intentional." The coordinates were unmistakable. They matched the exact location of a nebulae, an enormous, swirling cloud of gas and dust hidden deep within Andromeda. But this wasn't just any nebula. The map seemed to suggest that something was hidden within it, something that had remained undetected by conventional telescopes. Whatever it was important. "We need to send a probe," Dr. Hayes said, a sense of urgency building in her voice. "We need to find out what's there." And so, the race to uncover the truth about the Andromeda signals began. The world was on the brink of discovering something that would alter the course of human history. But as the team prepared to launch their first exploratory mission, they couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't the only ones listening. There was something out there, waiting. Something, or someone. And the question remained, who or what was behind the signals? What was it trying to tell us? And why had it waited so long to make contact? As the first probe was sent into the depths of Andromeda, the team waited with bated breath, knowing that they were about to cross the threshold into the unknown. But what they would find on the other side would change everything. Chapter 3. A Journey to the Unknown. The idea of venturing into the unknown has always been a theme in human history. From the first explorers who set sail into uncharted waters to the astronauts who crossed the boundary between Earth and space, humanity has always been driven by an insatiable curiosity. But as the team of scientists and engineers prepared for their most ambitious journey, yet one that would take them deep into the heart of the Andromeda Galaxy, they understood that the stakes had never been higher. The coordinates they had received from the mysterious signals had led them to a nebulous region in Andromeda, a place that had long been dismissed by astronomers as insignificant. Yet, the map decrypted by Dr. Hayes and her team had shown something else. There was something within that cloud of gas and dust, something the universe had been hiding. This wasn't just about discovery. It was about answering questions that had haunted humanity for centuries. Were we alone in the universe? Had other civilizations existed before us? Was there something out there, waiting, just beyond our reach? For Dr. Evelyn Hayes, the decision to launch an expedition was a no-brainer. She had been studying the signals for months, and now she knew there was no turning back. But even with all the preparations, the crew felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. They were no longer just scientists. They were pioneers on the verge of making a discovery that could change the course of human history. The mission, codenamed Project Stargazer, was set in motion with an unprecedented sense of urgency. The first step was to launch a probe, an uncrewed vessel designed to navigate through Andromeda's vastness, collect data, and deliver it back to Earth. The probe, built by the brightest minds in the world, was a marvel of technology. It was equipped with advanced sensors, quantum communication technology, and a navigation system capable of charting a course across millions of light years. For the first time in human history, a machine would travel farther than any probe before it, crossing the void that separated the Milky Way from Andromeda. As the probe was readied for launch, the world watched in collective anticipation. News had spread quickly. For the first time, humanity was reaching out to touch the stars beyond its own galaxy. People gathered in front of television screens, glued to the live broadcast as the countdown clock ticked down. The team at mission control was tense, their eyes fixed on the massive screen in front of them. Every second mattered. The probe would take years to reach its destination, and the data it returned would be invaluable. But they knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. "I don't think I'll believe it until we actually get the data back," Dr. Kowalski said, his voice tight with excitement. Dr. Hayes stood at the front of the room, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. She had always been a believer, but this was different. This was real. The countdown reached 0, and the probe blasted off from Earth's atmosphere, its engines roaring to life as it shot into the vast expanse of space. For the first time, humanity's gaze was fixed not on the moon, or even Mars, but on Andromeda, a galaxy that had once been a distant dream. The journey to Andromeda would take decades, but thanks to quantum communication technology, the team would receive data every few months. The probe would relay information back to Earth, but as it ventured deeper into the galaxy, the messages grew more cryptic. It was as if the universe itself were playing a game with them, teasing them with fragments of knowledge, urging them forward. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The probe moved at a steady pace, crossing light years with precision, charting unknown regions of space that had never before been seen by human eyes. Along the way, the probe encountered strange anomalies, bursts of radiation that didn't fit any known patterns, gravitational waves that suggested the presence of unknown masses, and unexplained energy fluctuations. But what truly fascinated the team was the constant, consistent data coming from the nebula within the Andromeda coordinates. Each time the probe sent a transmission, it brought back something new, a glimpse of what lay hidden within the cosmic fog. The data didn't just confirm the existence of something extraordinary. It seemed to suggest that there was something actively guarding it. "Look at this," Dr. Hayes said, staring at the screen as the latest transmission appeared. "We're not just dealing with an anomaly. There's something else out there. SOMETHE deliberate." The data revealed patterns that appeared to shift like the stars themselves were moving in response to the probe's presence. It was as though the probe had disturbed something ancient, something that had been lying dormant for eons. At first, the team theorized that they were dealing with a natural cosmic force, perhaps an undiscovered phenomenon that had been left undetected by human technology. But the longer the probe remained in the nebula, the more certain they became. This was no natural force. Whatever lay within Andromeda's heart was not of this world. Weeks turned into months, and the probe continued its journey toward the center of the nebula. The mission team back on Earth remained on high alert, processing the data as quickly as they could, trying to decode the mysteries that were unfolding before them. The signals from the nebula became increasingly clear, almost as if the space itself was communicating with them. "There's a rhythmic pattern," Dr. Kowalski said, pointing to the latest data. "It's almost like it's alive." "But that's impossible, right?" The team sat in stunned silence as they processed the implications of Kowalski's words. The idea that the nebula, or whatever was within it, might be alive was incomprehensible. But the evidence on the screen was hard to ignore. "I think it's trying to tell us something," Dr. Hayes said softly, her voice filled with awe. "It's like the signal we first detected. But now it's so much more. It's as though the nebula itself is responding to the probe." They had expected to find some evidence of a lost civilization, perhaps, or a natural phenomenon, far beyond human comprehension. But what they were encountering was something else entirely. It was as if the probe had awakened an ancient intelligence, one that had been dormant for millennia, waiting for humanity to find it. As the probe neared the center of the nebula, it encountered its first real challenge, a massive gravitational anomaly that seemed to warp spacetime itself. The sensors on board the probe began to go haywire as it entered the zone of influence, with the data becoming increasingly erratic. The gravitational field in this region was unlike anything the team had ever seen before, pulling at the fabric of space in ways that should have been impossible. "Get the data back. We need to know what's inside that field," Dr. Kowalski shouted, his hands flying over the controls as he tried to keep the probe steady. But it was too late. The anomaly seemed to reach out, pulling the probe toward its heart. The team watched in horror as the probe began to spiral, its instruments flickering and losing connection with the communication relay. "Contact lost," the mission control operator said, her voice tight with concern. "We've lost signal." The room fell into silence. The team had done everything they could to prepare for this moment. But nothing could have prepared them for the reality that the probe was now lost in the depths of Andromeda, swallowed by a cosmic force that they couldn't understand. But even as the team struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what had just happened, they couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of something much larger? Were they just the first to discover it? Or had they been drawn into a web of cosmic mystery that had been waiting for them all along? As the days passed, the team continued to analyze the data from the last successful transmission. Despite losing contact with the probe, they discovered something truly remarkable. Embedded in the final signal was a series of images, a distorted, encrypted snapshot of something enormous, something far beyond the scale of any human-made structure. And in the background of that image, there was a shadow, an enormous shape that seemed to loom over everything else. It was a shadow of something ancient, something vast, something that wasn't supposed to exist. The mystery of the Andromeda Galaxy deepened, and the team knew that this was just the beginning. But what lay ahead was unknown, a journey that would take them beyond the limits of human understanding. And in the quiet void of space, a message echoed across the stars. We are waiting. Chapter 4. The first contact. The feeling in the room was palpable, an uneasy, electric anticipation that hung in the air like a storm before the first drop of rain. Dr. Evelyn Hayes and her team sat around the sleek, polished conference table, their eyes glued to the glowing screens that displayed the most recent data from the lost probe. The final transmission had been received just hours ago, but it was unlike anything they had anticipated. For the first time, the team was certain. They had received an undeniable message, one that could alter everything. Humanity thought it knew about the universe. It wasn't just data. It was communication. There was no ambiguity. No more questioning if these signals were naturally occurring or merely random cosmic noise. What they were witnessing was intelligence, alien intelligence. I can't believe what I'm seeing, Dr. Kowalski whispered, his voice barely audible. The once confident scientist had gone pale, staring at the screen as if it were a portal to another world. The latest transmission was unlike anything the probe had sent before. It wasn't just a collection of random mathematical equations or cryptic symbols. No, this time, it was a clear, unmistakable message. The image that appeared on the screen was a geometric shape, almost too perfect to exist in nature, an intricate lattice of lines and symbols that swirled and shifted as if alive. And at the center of this pattern, an odd shape emerged, a sphere, hovering within the lattice, with a distinct shimmer that seemed to emanate outward. This isn't just a pattern anymore, Dr. Hayes said, her voice barely a whisper. This is ... communication. Something is trying to tell us something. The sphere was not just a static image. As they zoomed in, more details became visible. The surface of the sphere seemed to be composed of fractal-like shapes, endlessly repeating patterns that appeared to resonate with energy. In the background, there were faint, almost imperceptible flashes of light like distant stars, flickering in synchronization with the pulses of the sphere. There was no explanation, no context, but it was clear that whatever message was encoded here, it wasn't meant for human understanding yet. It was just the beginning. For a long moment, no one spoke. The team simply stared at the screen, absorbing the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Then, Dr. Kowalski broke the silence. We need to decode this. We need to understand it, and quickly. Dr. Hayes nodded, though her mind raced with the realization that the world they once knew was about to be irrevocably altered. The probe had sent more than just a cryptic message. It had sent a call that humanity had been waiting for, whether they knew it or not. But now, there was no going back. What had once been a distant, almost fantastical dream was now a reality. The team worked tirelessly, hours slipping into days as they tried to decipher the meaning behind the strange transmission. At first, the symbols seemed utterly alien, untranslatable in any conventional sense. However, There were patterns, unmistakable sequences of geometric shapes that matched the structure of the earlier signals. These patterns began to emerge. In a way that felt deliberate, almost methodical. Dr. Hayes leaned over her desk, fingers flying over her keyboard as she inputted the data into the quantum processor. It wasn't just about understanding the visual patterns. It was about breaking down the frequency of the signals, the pulses, and how they resonated with the energy signature that had accompanied the images. What if it's not just a message? Dr. Hayes mused aloud, her thoughts beginning to align with a terrifying possibility. What if this is an invitation? A key to something beyond our understanding? Her team exchanged uneasy glances. It was a plausible theory, one that made the most sense given what they had just received. The question, however, remained. If it was an invitation, what was it inviting them to? Just as Dr. Kowalski was about to respond, the computer screen blinked, flickering to life once again. It wasn't the same pattern as before. This time, the message was more direct. A new series of numbers appeared across the screen, accompanied by a faint hum that seemed to emanate from the speakers. "We've got something," Dr. Hayes said, her voice quivering slightly as she analyzed the incoming data. The sequence of numbers was familiar. It was a mathematical construct. But as she stared at it, the realization dawned upon her. It wasn't just random numbers. It was a time signature, an embedded code. "Do you see it?" she asked, her fingers tracing the lines on the screen. "This is a countdown." A countdown. The room fell silent again. The implications of this discovery were immediate and shocking. The alien intelligence wasn't just sending signals. It was giving them a timeline. A deadline. "What's the time left?" Dr. Kowalski asked, barely able to contain the urgency in his voice. Dr. Hayes processed the data, her hands shaking slightly as she did. "The countdown ends in just under 48 hours. The weight of her words sank into the room. What could they do in 48 hours? What was going to happen when the clock reached zero? The next 24 hours were spent in frantic preparation. The team knew that whatever was coming was beyond their control. They needed to respond. But how? They had only recently established the first contact with whatever or whoever was sending the signals. Now they were being given a timeline. They were being told to act, but what action could they take that would possibly be meaningful? At the same time, a wave of fear began to spread. What if the signals weren't benign? What if they were leading humanity into a trap, a cosmic game of cat and mouse? Could this be the beginning of something darker? "We can't ignore it," Dr. Kowalski said firmly. "This is our one shot to answer the most profound question humanity has ever asked. We have to respond." Dr. Hayes nodded in agreement. "But we need to be careful. We don't know what's on the other side of this." The next 24 hours were spent constructing the most critical message humanity had ever composed. The team worked together to encode a reply. They used the same patterns found in the alien signals, carefully mirroring the structure of the message, but this time, they introduced their own response, a sequence of prime numbers followed by the phrase, "We are ready." But even as they prepared to send the message, a chilling thought crossed Dr. Hayes' mind. What if the countdown wasn't just a message, but a warning? What if "we are ready" wasn't enough? They had no choice but to send it. The probe, though lost in Andromeda, had brought them this far. They could only hope that their response would be received in time. The transmission was sent. They had done everything they could, everything they knew how to do. The next few hours were the longest of Dr. Hayes' life. Then, as if on cue, the communication system hummed again, a signal breaking through the static dot. It was different this time. The message wasn't just a series of images or numbers. It was a voice, a strange, otherworldly sound, like the hum of the cosmos itself. The team sat in stunned silence as the voice seemed to pierce through the communication system. It wasn't in any language they recognized, but there was a rhythmic pattern to it, like music. It felt as though it was speaking directly to them. Beneath the strange tones, there was an unmistakable clarity. The voice was not just communicating data. It was alive, and it was aware of them. A chilling realization dawned on Dr. Hayes. "We've made contact," she whispered. The room was electric with anticipation. Dr. Kowalski turned to her, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. "But what does it mean?" It was too soon to know. The only certainty was that they had opened a door to a new reality, one that was as terrifying as it was thrilling. The truth of the Andromeda Galaxy, of the alien intelligence that had reached out to them, was just beginning to unfold. They had crossed the threshold, and there was no turning back. But as the voice continued to echo in the room, one thing was certain. Humanity's place in the universe was no longer defined by what we knew. It was defined by the questions we were now asking. And soon, they would have the answers. Chapter 5. The Alien Blueprint. The months that followed the first contact felt like a strange, surreal fever dream for Dr. Evelyn Hayes and her team. Their lives, once grounded in the cold logic of science and the predictable rhythms of data, had become a blur of encrypted transmissions, alien signals, and a sense of wonder that seemed to defy the very fabric of their understanding. But now, as the message from the Andromeda Galaxy had been received in full, the weight of what they were dealing with began to settle in. The communication they had received was no longer a simple series of mathematical patterns or a disembodied voice. This time, the message was clear: a blueprint. A set of instructions, encoded with such precision and clarity that even a skeptic could not deny its origin. It was more than just data. It was a roadmap to understanding the very nature of the universe. And that map was nothing short of astonishing. The first stage of the blueprint was deceptively simple, but even the smallest details had profound implications. The blueprint began with a series of geometric shapes, triangles, circles, and spheres. But these shapes were not like anything found in nature. They were too precise, too perfect. The proportions of the shapes, when measured, seemed to follow patterns that echoed ancient mathematical formulas like the Fibonacci sequence, but they extended beyond known geometry, spiraling outward in ways that defied human comprehension. Dr. Hayes couldn't help but be captivated. "This isn't just a blueprint for technology," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "It's a message about how the universe itself is structured, a hidden pattern." As the team delved deeper into the blueprint, they began to uncover more detailed, layered patterns. At first, it seemed like a series of interlocking circles and geometric pathways. But as the patterns grew more complex, the pieces began to shift, revealing something far more profound. What had initially looked like a schematic for some kind of alien starship now seemed to be an intricate explanation of how gravity, time, and space interacted at their most fundamental levels. The more Dr. Hayes and her team analyzed the blueprint, the more it became clear that what they were looking at wasn't a manual for building machines. It was a guide for manipulating the very fabric of reality itself. "Look at this," Dr. Kowalski said, his voice quivering with disbelief. He pointed to a section of the blueprint that depicted a central, rotating sphere. This sphere seemed to be connected by a series of wave-like lines, each one extending outward, surrounding the central sphere like an aura. The lines seemed to pulse with energy, as if the sphere was drawing energy from the very fabric of space-time. Dr. Hayes leaned in. "It's a propulsion system," she murmured, her eyes scanning the intricate design. "But this isn't just any propulsion system. This is something else entirely." The system depicted in the blueprint wasn't based on traditional rocket science or anything resembling conventional engineering. There were no exhaust pipes, no combustion engines, no mechanical parts that could be traced back to anything human-made. Instead, it showed a structure that operated on gravitational waves. The blueprint described a way to amplify gravity, to manipulate it, to bend the very space-time continuum itself. This isn't just travel, Dr. Hayes said, her voice growing steadier as the implications set in. This is interdimensional travel. This isn't about getting from point A to point B in space. This is about bending reality itself. The technology outlined in the blueprint seemed to defy the laws of physics. The gravitational field described in the design was not a force that pulled objects toward one another, like Earth's gravity did. Instead, it was a force that bent space itself, allowing objects to slip between points in space, as though the fabric of spacetime could be folded in half. The diagram showed a kind of folded space, a trick where an object could exist at 2 points at once, allowing for instantaneous travel across unimaginable distances. But there was something else, something even more extraordinary. At the heart of the blueprint was a reference to element 115, the mysterious substance Bob Lazar had spoken of in his testimony all those years ago. Dr. Hayes ran her fingers over the holographic display, tracing the lines that connected the gravitational systems to the element. "It's all here," she whispered. This is exactly what Lazar described. The blueprint didn't just describe the propulsion system. It also contained blueprints for the materials needed to build it, including the use of element 115 as a power source. According to the instructions, element 115 had to be stabilized in a way that allowed it to release a form of anti-gravitational energy. This energy, when manipulated correctly, could fuel the gravity amplifiers, allowing the spacecraft to move without using any conventional propulsion. "This is beyond anything we've ever imagined," Dr. Kowalski said, shaking his head in disbelief. "We're talking about a power source that doesn't require fuel. A technology that could bend spacetime, allowing for faster-than-light travel." The team worked in near silence as they processed the information. But one question hung over them all. If this technology truly existed, then why had it remained hidden for so long? The next several days were spent trying to decode the rest of the blueprint, but the team knew they had only begun to scratch the surface. The complexity of the design was overwhelming. The instructions on how to build the gravity amplifiers alone took hours to decipher. But as they continued to study the details, they found more pieces of the puzzle, more data that seemed to defy logic and reason. One of the most mind-boggling sections of the blueprint depicted a machine that could manipulate not just gravity, but time itself. The device, when activated, would create a time dilation field, slowing down or speeding up time within its immediate vicinity. This was not theoretical. The blueprint clearly outlined how the system would function, describing how gravitational waves could be used to affect the passage of time in localized areas. I don't think we're ready for this," Dr. Hayes muttered, staring at the section of the blueprint that outlined time manipulation. "What if this is more than just technology? What if this is the key to understanding the very nature of reality?" It was then that the team realized the scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was a doorway to an entirely new understanding of the universe, one that blurred the lines between science, philosophy, and the very fabric of existence itself. As the blueprint continued to unfold, the team found more staggering revelations. The Andromeda civilization, whoever they were, had mastered technologies that were millennia ahead of Earth's capabilities. And yet, the blueprint was not just a technological marvel. It was a spiritual one too. It conveyed a philosophy, a way of thinking about the universe that tied together the physical and metaphysical. It spoke of balance, harmony, and an understanding of the universe as a living, breathing entity. "We're dealing with something more than just an alien civilization," Dr. Kowalski said, his voice almost reverent. "This is a different way of thinking, a different way of seeing the universe." The blueprint's final section contained a series of coordinates, yet another map. But this time, the destination was different. It wasn't just a location in space. It was a location beyond space, beyond time itself. The coordinates led to an uncharted area of the Andromeda Galaxy, an area that seemed to exist outside the known bounds of the galaxy itself. Dr. Hayes realized. The implications. This is where the source of the signals came from, she said quietly. This is where we need to go. But it wasn't just a matter of sending a probe or even a manned mission. This was something beyond that. The blueprint suggested that to reach the source, they would have to unlock the secrets of element 115, harness its energy, and use it to power a machine that could travel across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. It was a daunting task, one that would take years, if not decades, to accomplish. But Dr. Hayes knew one thing: they had to try. The secrets contained within the blueprint were too important to ignore. The fate of humanity, of the entire galaxy, might depend on what they uncovered next. As the team began their preparations to embark on this extraordinary journey, Dr. Hayes stood at the window, looking out over the vast expanse of the universe. The stars were so distant, so unreachable. And yet, in the wake of the blueprint, they now felt closer than ever before. The mysteries of the universe had been unlocked, and the key to understanding it was now in their hands. But there was one question that lingered, one that the team hadn't been able to answer. What would they find when they reached the source of the signals? Would it be the culmination of their journey? Or would they discover something far darker, a force they were not yet ready to confront? As the countdown began for the next phase of their mission, Dr. Hayes knew one thing for certain. The journey ahead would test everything they knew about science, about the universe, and about humanity's place within it. And it was a journey they could never turn back from. Chapter 6. Into the heart of Andromeda. As the preparations for the mission to Andromeda accelerated, the atmosphere in the control room was thick with anticipation. Dr. Evelyn Hayes and her team were now in the final stages of what had once been a dream that was now rapidly becoming a reality. The blueprints, the signals, the alien technology, they had all led them to this pivotal moment. A moment where humanity would finally venture beyond its home galaxy, into the heart of the unknown. The plan was simple. They would use the information contained within the blueprint to construct the technology necessary to reach the Andromeda Galaxy, a prototype starship, equipped with the ability to manipulate space-time using element 115 as the core power source, was being assembled. The starship, codenamed Erebus, would carry the team of scientists and engineers on a journey that would take them across millions of light years, into the very center of Andromeda, to the source of the alien signals. The Erebus was a marvel of technology, its sleek, black surface reflecting the lights of the launch facility. Designed to be as much a symbol of humanity's determination as it was a vessel of exploration, it was equipped with the most advanced propulsion systems ever conceived. Yet, despite its cutting-edge technology, the ship still had an eerie, almost alien quality to it. There was something about it, something in the design, that felt as though it had been conceived by minds far more advanced than Earth's. The team gathered in the launch control room, a place now filled with a nervous energy that matched the gravity of their mission. Engineers and scientists, dressed in their crisp uniforms, moved quickly, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors and screens. The countdown to launch was ticking, but even as the seconds counted down, Dr. Hayes felt a strange sense of calm. This was the moment they had been preparing for. It was time to make history. We're about to cross a threshold, Dr. Hayes said quietly to Dr. Kowalski, who was standing beside her. His face was a mixture of awe and apprehension. We can never go back from this. I know, Kowalski replied, his voice tight with anticipation. But we have to do this. For everyone. And with that, the countdown reached 0. The Erebus's engines roared to life, vibrating the ground beneath their feet as the massive starship slowly lifted off the launch pad. The controlled chaos of the room was replaced with a quiet tension. Dr. Hayes couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, mixed with an overwhelming weight of responsibility. They were about to embark on a journey that no human had ever taken before, but as the ship ascended into the sky, she knew that there was no turning back. They were now bound for the Andromeda Galaxy. The journey to Andromeda was expected to take years, at least 5 by conventional methods of space travel. But the Erebus wasn't just any spaceship. Using the advanced propulsion system designed around element 115, the ship was capable of bending the fabric of space-time, effectively folding it like a piece of paper. This was the key to their mission. Instead of traveling the vast distance in real time, they would essentially skip through space, bypassing the cosmic void between the Milky Way and Andromeda in a matter of weeks. As the crew settled into the ship's living quarters, their lives slowly adjusted to the rhythms of space travel. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering, a city in motion, designed to support the crew's physical and mental well-being for years. But for all its advanced features, there was an undeniable tension that lingered in the air. The unknown stretched before them, and even the most seasoned scientists and engineers couldn't shake the sense that they were venturing into something far beyond their comprehension. The heart of Andromeda. Dr. Hayes often found herself repeating. The phrase had taken on a life of its own. What could they possibly expect to find at the center of that galaxy, hidden away for so long? The message, the blueprint, the signals all pointed to something extraordinary. But what was it? A civilization? A secret? A weapon? The journey was long, but the passage of time became strangely fluid. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. The crew continued their experiments, analyzing the data coming from the ship's sensors and the gravitational anomalies that surrounded them. As they traveled deeper into space, the Erebus encountered strange phenomena: massive gravitational wells, unexplained fluctuations in the energy fields, and distortions in the fabric of space-time. The ship's systems adapted, adjusting automatically, but there was always an eerie sense of unease. Every new phenomenon felt like a step further into the unknown, a sign that they were approaching something that even their advanced technology couldn't fully comprehend. It was during the 3rd month of their journey that things began to change. As the Erebus approached the edge of Andromeda, the crew detected a series of strange, high-frequency pulses emanating from the center of the galaxy. These pulses were different from the original signals they had received. They were more refined, more focused. It was as though someone or something was sending them a message, one that was directed specifically at the Erebus. Dr. Hayes, "You need to see this," said one of the crew members. A young astrophysicist named Martin Liu. He was stationed at one of the monitoring consoles, his face pale with astonishment. Dr. Hayes hurried over to his station. The screen displayed a series of rapidly changing data points, anomalous energy signatures, but what caught her attention was the pattern. It was unmistakable. "Are these the signals from the nebula?" Dr. Kowalski asked, stepping over to her side. "They single quotes read ... Different," Dr. Hayes said, her mind racing as she processed the data. "This is a direct signal. They're calling us in." For the first time since leaving Earth, the team felt a sense of urgency. The data confirmed it. They were being drawn toward something. The gravitational waves, the mysterious energy pulses, they were all leading them to a specific point in space, the heart of Andromeda. "We have to proceed carefully," Dr. Hayes said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "We're getting closer. This is it. We're at the threshold." Days later, the Erebus finally entered the heart of the galaxy. The ship's advanced propulsion system, which had allowed them to traverse the vast expanse of space at unimaginable speeds, was now put to the test as they approached the center of Andromeda. What lay ahead was unlike anything they had encountered before. As they neared the coordinates from the blueprint, a strange phenomenon began to unfold. A massive energy field, unlike any they had encountered, surrounded the ship. It was as if The very space around them was warping, bending in response to their presence. The crew scrambled to adjust the ship's trajectory, but the field seemed to be pulling them in, drawing them closer to the heart of Andromeda. What the hell is happening? Dr. Kowalski exclaimed, gripping the armrests of his seat. It's a force field of some kind. Dr. Hayes said, her voice calm but filled with awe. I think this is the gateway. It's protecting something. The energy field flickered, and the ship lurched as if it were being pulled into the core of the galaxy itself. The crew struggled to maintain control, but it was no use. The Erebus was being guided forward, as if the galaxy itself were opening a door for them. Through the viewport, the crew saw it. A massive structure, impossibly large, stretching across the galaxy like a colossal web of energy and matter. It was the source of the signals, the place where everything had been leading them. It's a city. Dr. Hayes breathed, her heart racing. A city in space. But this was no ordinary city. It was a sprawling geometric network with structures that seemed to defy all known principles of engineering. Towers of light and energy spiraled into the distance, their shapes constantly shifting, as though they were alive. The city pulsed with energy, a living organism that seemed to breathe with the universe itself. This is it, Dr. Kowalski whispered, his voice trembling with awe. This is the heart of Andromeda. As the Erebus descended toward the city, the energy field around them began to dissipate, like the opening of a gate. The crew was silent as they approached the center of the galaxy, knowing that they had reached the culmination of their journey. They had uncovered a mystery that had been hidden for eons, a secret buried deep within the heart of Andromeda, waiting to be discovered. But what they would find next, what lay within the heart of that city, was beyond their comprehension. Chapter 7. The ancient civilizations. The Erebus drifted silently through the vast expanse, its engines humming with an eerie calm as it approached the heart of the Andromeda Galaxy. Outside the observation windows, the city that had once been nothing more than a figment of their wildest theories now lay before them, an otherworldly marvel that seemed to stretch endlessly into the void. Its shimmering, pulsating towers, made of light and energy, loomed over them as if inviting them to enter. It was a city unlike anything humanity had ever conceived, built on a scale that defied the imagination. The very air around them seemed to vibrate with ancient energy, as though the city itself was alive, a living testament to the secrets it held. But as awestruck as the crew was, there was an undeniable tension in the air. They had crossed the threshold into the unknown. The journey that had begun with a simple signal had now brought them to a place where the boundaries of space, time, and even civilization itself were blurred. What could they possibly find here? What secrets lay hidden in this ancient alien city? Dr. Evelyn Hayes stood at the front of the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the unfolding spectacle. Beside her, Dr. Kowalski and the rest of the crew stared in stunned silence, unable to tear their gaze away from the city that loomed in front of them. The distant energy pulses, the glowing structures, the swirling patterns of light, they were all part of a greater whole, a puzzle that had been waiting to be solved. This is it, Dr. Hayes said, her voice low and reverent. We've finally arrived. This is what the signals were leading us to. The city before them was not made of the conventional materials they were used to. There were no traditional buildings of stone or metal. Instead, the city was built from intricate, crystalline structures that seemed to shimmer and change with every passing moment. The walls of the city appeared to be alive, shifting and transforming as though they were in constant motion, pulsing with energy. It was as if the very fabric of the city was constructed from the manipulation of light and gravitational fields, bending space itself. We need to proceed carefully, Dr. Kowalski said, his voice steady but tinged with a sense of reverence. We don't know what we're dealing with here. Whatever this civilization is, they've been gone for eons. The Erebus slowed, and the crew prepared for their descent. The energy field that had protected the city now seemed to dissipate, fading away as they approached. The gravity around them shifted, and the ship began to respond to the unseen forces, its controls becoming more responsive as they drew closer to the center of the city. As they descended further, the crew's excitement began to turn into a quiet unease. There was something about the city, something that tugged at the back of their minds, a feeling that they were not entirely welcome. The city may have been abandoned, but its presence was undeniable, alive with the ghosts of the civilization that had once thrived there. The city's structures grew larger as they approached, their intricate designs coming into sharper focus. What stood before them was a monumental complex of immense proportions. Some of the buildings resembled crystalline towers, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that seemed to echo the symbols from the alien blueprint they had received. Others were vast, domed structures, their surfaces etched with markings that resembled both organic and mechanical forms, a fusion of two worlds. And everywhere, there were traces of advanced technology devices embedded within the walls, pulsating with an energy that resonated throughout the entire city. "We've never seen anything like this," Dr. Hayes whispered, her voice filled with awe. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined. It's like a fusion of nature and technology, something we've never been able to conceptualize." The Erebus finally touched down, its landing gear gently sinking into the soft ground beneath the alien city. The engines powered down, and the ship settled into a stillness that seemed almost unnatural. The crew stood in silence, each one grappling with the enormity of what they had just discovered. "We need to get out there," Dr. Kowalski said, his voice filled with urgency. "This is the moment we've all been waiting for." The crew gathered their gear and made their way to the airlock. The soft hum of the ship's systems was the only sound that filled the room as they prepared to step outside. Dr. Hayes adjusted her helmet and glanced over at Dr. Kowalski, who stood beside her, his face a mix of excitement and apprehension. "We're about to walk on ground that no one has ever touched," Dr. Hayes said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship. "We're about to uncover a civilization that existed long before humanity. What will we find? What will it mean for us?" Dr. Kowalski gave a quiet nod, his eyes focused ahead. "We're here to answer those questions." With that, the airlock door opened, and the crew stepped out into the alien world. The ground beneath their feet was soft but firm, composed of a strange material that seemed to pulse with energy. The city stretched out before them, its towering structures looming overhead like silent sentinels. The sky above was an iridescent purple, with swirling clouds of gas and dust that gave the entire landscape an otherworldly glow. The air felt thick with history, with the weight of something ancient, something powerful, and yet profoundly silent. As they walked forward, they passed through enormous arches and corridors, some of which seemed to lead nowhere, as if they were intended to be seen, not traversed. The walls of the city were etched with symbols that matched the geometric patterns they had seen in the alien blueprint. These markings seemed to be a form of communication, though their meaning remained elusive. There were no signs of life, no creatures or beings, just the quiet echo of a civilization long gone. Dr. Hayes stopped in front of one of the massive crystalline structures, her hand reaching out to touch the cool surface. The structure seemed to hum beneath her fingertips, as if it recognized her presence. The design was so intricate that it was hard to believe it was made by any form of life they could understand. It was as if the very molecules of the building were alive, shifting and changing in response to her touch. "This is incredible," Dr. Hayes said softly, her voice filled with awe. "The materials used here, this is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's almost as if they had the ability to manipulate the very fabric of reality." Dr. Kowalski approached, his eyes scanning the structure. The civilization that built this wasn't just advanced. They were transcendent. They didn't just master technology, they mastered the very forces of nature itself. As the crew ventured deeper into the city, they began to find signs of the civilization's former inhabitants. The walls of the structures were adorned with murals, intricate, glowing paintings that depicted scenes of alien life. These beings were unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Their forms were long and ethereal, with limbs that seemed to stretch in impossible directions. They were depicted standing alongside what appeared to be massive, floating machines that resembled the gravitational amplifiers they had seen in the blueprint. These beings, Dr. Hayes said, her voice filled with wonder, they were the ones who built all of this. They were the ones who had the power to manipulate space-time. The murals told stories of an ancient civilization, one that had reached the pinnacle of knowledge, one that had unlocked the secrets of the universe. But the images were not just artistic representations, they were symbols of a culture that had once existed in harmony with the very forces of the cosmos. The civilization had understood the universe as a living entity, as something that could be shaped and molded, like clay in the hands of an artist. But as they ventured further into the heart of the city, the mood began to change. There was a growing sense of unease among the crew. The city, despite its grandeur and beauty, felt cold, abandoned. The murals, once vibrant with life, now seemed to tell a darker story, a story of decline and loss. The once glowing walls now flickered faintly, as though the very energy that had powered the city was slowly fading. It's as if they knew their time was running out, Dr. Kowalski said, his voice somber. Dr. Hayes nodded, her gaze falling to the murals once more. They reached the height of their civilization, and then something happened. Something caused them to vanish. What if they knew they were running out of time? What if they tried to warn us? As they continued to explore, they came across a central chamber, its entrance flanked by two towering figures that resembled the beings in the murals. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with shelves that held strange devices, some of which resembled nothing the crew had ever seen before. At the center of the room was a massive pulsating orb, its surface covered in intricate designs that matched the ones from the blueprint. "This is it," Dr. Hayes whispered. "This is what we've been searching for." The orb seemed to glow in response to their presence, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. As they stepped closer, a hum filled the air, and the chamber seemed to come alive. The orb, once dormant, began to pulse with energy, as if recognizing their arrival. Dr. Kowalski looked at Dr. Hayes, his eyes wide with amazement. "We found it, the heart of their civilization. This is the source." But as the orb hummed, something else happened. A faint voice, barely audible at first, began to resonate from within the chamber. It was not a voice from any of them. It was ancient, deep, and powerful, reverberating with a sense of urgency. "We have been waiting for you." Chapter 8. The Andromeda Guardian. The voice reverberated through the chamber like the echoes of a long-forgotten memory. Deep, resonant, and heavy with millennia of knowledge. It was not the voice of any living being that Dr. Evelyn Hayes and her team had ever encountered. It was something more, something ancient, a consciousness far beyond anything human technology or understanding had prepared them for. "We have been waiting for you." The words seemed to come from everywhere at once, filling the entire chamber with an overwhelming presence. It was as if the very walls of the city, the floor beneath their feet, and the air around them were alive, resonating with this voice, this entity. For a moment, the team stood frozen, stunned by the sheer power that emanated from the orb at the center of the room. They had reached the heart of the alien civilization, and now they were confronted by something they had never even imagined. "Do you understand?" Dr. Kowalski whispered, his voice trembling slightly as the weight of the moment settled in. "No," Dr. Hayes replied, shaking her head in awe and fear. "I don't think we do." The orb before them pulsed with an unearthly glow, its surface shimmering with energy. The designs etched into its surface began to shift, swirling like liquid light, as if the orb itself were alive, responding to their presence. It was no longer just an object. It was an entity in and of itself, connected to the very heart of this ancient civilization. We are the Guardians. The voice continued, the words slower now, almost as if it was speaking directly to them. Each syllable heavy with purpose. We have watched over this galaxy for eons. We have seen the rise and fall of civilizations, yours included. You are the next. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what they were hearing. For all their preparations, for all the knowledge they had gained in their journey, this was something entirely beyond their comprehension. They had uncovered a civilization, yes, but what had they actually discovered? And why had they been chosen to hear this voice? Guardians? Dr. Hayes asked. Cautiously, her voice steady despite the growing sense of dread. What do you mean? Who are you? What is this place? The orb responded with a hum, and the walls of the chamber shimmered, almost as if the space itself were opening, revealing images and symbols that appeared to float in mid-air. They were visions, glimpses of the past, the present, and the distant future. The images flashed in rapid succession, too fast to fully grasp. But there were patterns, themes, and connections woven into the display. The first vision that appeared was of a vast, expansive city, one much like the one they stood in, but alive with beings, people, or creatures they could not identify. The city was filled with immense structures, their design both elegant and functional, pulsating with energy. The streets were bathed in an ethereal glow, and towering spires reached into the sky, their forms a strange fusion of organic and technological elements. But as the vision unfolded, it shifted. The scene darkened, and the city began to deteriorate. Buildings crumbled, energy fields flickered, and the once thriving metropolis seemed to collapse under its own weight. There were no bodies, no sign of life, but the sense of loss was palpable. Dr. Kowalski stepped forward, his hand shaking slightly, as he gestured toward the vision. This is what happened to them. They died, or they disappeared. The voice responded, its tone laden with sorrow. No, we did not die, we ascended. The second vision that appeared was even more shocking. It showed a figure tall, majestic, and enveloped in light, standing before an enormous structure. The figure seemed to be speaking, their hands raised as if invoking something beyond the material world. Energy surged from the structure, spiraling outward and enveloping the figure, before they vanished into the light, becoming part of it. We ascended, the voice repeated. We left the physical world behind, becoming one with the energy that binds all things. But before we left behind the guardianship of this galaxy, to protect, to guide, to observe. Dr. Hayes felt a chill run down her spine as the weight of the entity's words settled over her. Ascended? She asked quietly. You mean ... you didn't die? You ... transformed? The orb pulsed again, brighter this time, and a new vision appeared, one that was filled with darkness. It was a vision of a vast, empty space, devoid of life. But as they watched, the emptiness began to shift, like something was moving beneath the surface of the void. The space seemed to tremble, and a massive force, dark and swirling, began to coalesce in the center of the vision. This is the threat, the voice intoned gravely. The void. The team watched in horrified silence as the dark force grew, expanding and consuming everything in its path. Planets, stars, and galaxies were swallowed by it, vanishing into nothingness. The image was filled with a terrifying sense of destruction, an unstoppable force that seemed to be erasing existence itself. The void, Dr. Kowalski whispered, his voice thick with fear. Is that what destroyed your civilization? No. The voice responded, its tone somber. The void has always existed. It is the natural counterbalance of existence. Without life, There can be nothing to challenge it. The Guardians, we were created to prevent it from consuming everything. To protect the balance. Dr. Hayes took a deep breath, her heart racing as she tried to understand the full scope of what they were witnessing. This was not just a story of a lost civilization. This was something much older, much more powerful. It was a cosmic duty that transcended time, space, and reality itself. Why are you telling us this? Dr. Hayes asked, her voice trembling with the enormity of the revelation. What do you want from us? The orb's glow intensified, and the next vision flashed before them. This time, it was of a small, distant world, the Earth. The planet was vibrant, full of life, with oceans, forests, and mountains that stretched toward the sky. But as the vision zoomed in, it revealed a single figure standing alone in a desolate landscape. The figure was familiar. It was Bob Lazare, the man who had first revealed the truth about the alien craft and the secrets of Area 51. The orb spoke again, its voice reverberating through the chamber. We have been watching. We have seen your kind grow, evolve, and expand. But you are at a crossroads. You are on the brink of discovering the very secrets of the universe. But you do not yet understand the consequences of this knowledge. Dr. Kowalski stepped forward, his brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? What consequences? The knowledge of the void, the voice replied. The power to manipulate space-time. The ability to bend reality. These are not gifts, but burdens. The burden of creation, of destruction. We have watched over this galaxy to ensure that no one misuses this power. But now, you have reached the edge. You must choose. Will you continue to seek the truth, even if it threatens your existence? Dr. Hayes stood in silence, her mind reeling. The knowledge they had uncovered of the alien civilization, the technology, the void was both exhilarating and terrifying. The power to manipulate reality itself was within their reach, but with that power came the responsibility to wield it wisely. The orb's glow began to fade, and the voice spoke for the final time. We have watched over you. We have protected you, but we can no longer remain silent. The decision is yours. Will you ascend like we did? Or will you fall into the void like so many others before you? As the vision faded, the chamber fell silent. The crew was left in the darkness, the weight of the decision before them hanging heavy in the air. The path forward was uncertain, filled with dangers they could not fully comprehend. But they knew one thing for certain. They had crossed a threshold. One that would change the course of humanity forever. Dr. Hayes turned to the crew, her voice filled with resolve. We have to move forward. Whatever the consequences, we cannot turn back now. But deep down, she knew the truth. They had been given a choice that would shape the future of the universe itself. And only time would tell whether they would rise to the challenge or fall into the darkness. Chapter 9. Returning Home. Journey back to Earth was nothing like the one that had brought Dr. Evelyn Hayes and her team to the heart of the Andromeda Galaxy. The weight of their discoveries, the ancient alien civilization, the warning from the Andromeda Guardian, and the staggering truth about the void lingered over them like an insurmountable cloud. The Erebus, once a beacon of hope and human ingenuity, now felt like a prison, carrying them home with the knowledge that the universe had secrets far more complex, far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. As the Erebus turned back toward the Milky Way, the crew moved in a subdued silence. The corridors that had once buzzed with excitement now felt hollow, the hum of the engines a constant reminder of the burden they carried. The exhilaration that had fueled their journey to Andromeda had been replaced with a quiet, creeping fear. Fear of what they had learned and what it meant for humanity. The decision to leave Andromeda had been forced upon them. The Guardian had made it clear. The power to manipulate space-time, the ability to traverse dimensions, was not something that humanity was ready for. And yet, in their hearts, The crew knew they could not simply abandon the knowledge they had uncovered. They had to bring it back. They had to share it with the world, but the reality of that decision was settling in. Dr. Hayes couldn't shake the image of the void, the swirling, consuming darkness that threatened everything it touched. The Guardian's warning echoed in her mind. You must choose. Will you ascend, or will you fall into the void? The question haunted her, for she knew that humanity had not yet made that choice. They had merely discovered a new power, a new truth, but whether they could handle it remained to be seen. The first few weeks of the return journey passed in a blur. The Erebus sped through the cosmos, crossing the vast gulf between galaxies. The crew's minds consumed by the magnitude of their findings. They spent their days poring over the data they had collected, trying to make sense of the alien technology they had encountered, the blueprint they had decoded, and the strange, cryptic messages from the Guardian. But no matter how hard they worked, the same question always loomed in the back of their minds. What now? What are we supposed to do with all of this? Dr. Kowalski asked one evening, his voice low as he sat across from Dr. Hayes in the ship's observation deck. They were staring at the stars outside the viewport, the endless void stretching before them. Dr. Hayes had asked herself the same question more times than she could count. We bring it back, she said softly. We share it with Earth. We have to. We can't keep this to ourselves. Kowalski shook his head slowly, his face marked by the weariness of their journey. Do you think humanity is ready for this? For what we've discovered, the power to bend space-time, the void ... the very balance of the universe? How do we even begin to explain that? Dr. Hayes exhaled slowly, her mind grappling with the same fears. I don't know, she admitted. But we don't have a choice. We're at a crossroads. If we hide this, if we keep it from the world, we're no better than the civilizations that fell into the void. We have to trust that humanity will rise to the challenge. But as she spoke the words, a sense of doubt crept into her thoughts. Could humanity rise to such a challenge? Or were they doomed to repeat the mistakes of those who had come before them? Was this knowledge, this power, too much for them to handle? The journey back to Earth took longer than expected. Despite the advanced technology aboard the Erebus, the passage of time, it seemed, had its own rhythm, stretching the return voyage into an eternity of silence and contemplation. The closer they came to Earth, the more they felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Would the world accept the truth they brought back? Would it understand? Or would they become the harbingers of humanity's destruction, unable to comprehend the forces they had uncovered? Dr. Hayes spent many of her nights staring out into the abyss of space, the stars twinkling silently as they sped toward home. She thought of the Guardian's final words, "You must choose." What had they chosen, really? To bring the knowledge back, or to heed the warning and leave it all behind? The choice, she realized, wasn't as clear-cut as she had once believed. As the Erebus neared Earth's orbit, the crew prepared for their return. They sent a message ahead to the United Nations and major space agencies, informing them of their arrival and the importance of their mission. But there was an undercurrent of unease in every communication, a feeling that the world was not quite ready for what they were about to unleash. When the Erebus finally broke through Earth's atmosphere, the crew felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. They had made it back. They had uncovered the secrets of Andromeda, the mysteries of the ancient civilization that had once ruled the stars. They had seen the power to alter space-time itself, and had heard the warnings of the Guardian. And now, they had to face the world. As the ship landed at a remote facility in Nevada, the familiar landscape of Earth stretched before them, blue skies, arid deserts, and the distant hum of civilization. But it felt different now. The world they had once known, the world they had left behind, seemed small and insignificant compared to what they had learned. They had been to the heart of the universe, and now they were returning to a place that had no idea of the cosmic forces at play. just beyond their reach. The press conference was set up just days after their return. Dr. Hayes stood at the front of a sterile conference room, facing a sea of reporters, cameras, and microphones. The eyes of the world were on her, waiting for the truth, the story of their journey through Andromeda, the ancient civilization, and the perilous knowledge they had uncovered. She took a deep breath, preparing herself for what was about to come. This wasn't just about sharing their discoveries. It was about confronting humanity with a truth that would forever alter their understanding of the universe. It was about asking them to rise to a challenge that no one had ever been prepared for. The room fell silent as she began. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've discovered over the past year goes far beyond anything humanity has ever known. We have made contact with an ancient civilization in the Andromeda Galaxy. We have uncovered their technology, the ability to manipulate space-time, to bend reality itself. We have learned that we are not alone in the universe, and that our existence is part of a much larger cosmic story. There was a murmur in the crowd. She could feel the weight of their skepticism, their disbelief. But she continued, her voice steady despite the pressure. We have been given a gift and a warning. The knowledge we've uncovered is both a blessing and a burden. The power to manipulate the fabric of space and time is not something that should be taken lightly. We've seen the consequences of civilizations that misused this power, and we've been shown the threat that lies at the edges of the universe, something we call the void. The balance of existence itself is fragile, and we are now a part of that balance. She paused, letting the words sink in. The decision is ours. We can use this knowledge to better our world, to advance our understanding of the universe, or we can fall into the same traps that other civilizations have. The choice is ours, but it must be made with wisdom, with caution. The power to change everything is now within our grasp. And we must ask ourselves, are we ready? The room was still, the reporters hanging on her every word. Dr. Hayes could feel the weight of history on her shoulders. This was it, the moment that would define everything to come. What humanity did with this knowledge, how they chose to use it, would shape the future of the entire galaxy. But as she looked out at the sea of faces before her, she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't ready. Could anyone be ready for what they had brought back? Could humanity truly understand the weight of the choices they now faced? As the press conference ended and the room began to clear, Dr. Hayes stepped away from the podium, her mind heavy with the questions that had no easy answers. They had uncovered the truth about the universe, but what would humanity do with that truth? Would they rise to the occasion, or would they succumb to the same mistakes that had plagued civilizations before them? The choice, she realized, was not just for them to make, it was for all of humanity. And the journey they had begun was only the beginning.